morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to another episode of the Life You Deserve podcast. Today, I am delighted to be able to welcome my special guest, a young lady called Naomi Buffrey. Now, she is an anxiety specialist, so she helps mainly women and focuses a lot on mums because she is a mum herself. With anxiety, but today we're focusing on one special area of her work, which is social anxiety. Don't really know a lot about this because it's not something that I've particularly ever suffered with. Who knew? But she explains to us how social anxiety manifests itself. So the kind of things that you might be experiencing if this is you. So being a real people pleaser for one, really worrying that you're doing the right thing all the time. That kind of guilt about not being right and not being good. That moment when you're worried that people aren't going to like you, and so you'll almost bend over backwards to make sure that you do everything in your power to resolve that situation because it's too fearful otherwise. So this is a really interesting episode, and if this is you, or maybe it's somebody that you know, then please do share this episode around, and I hope you have as much fun as I did listening to Naomi, because it's my real passion to help you live the life you deserve. So hi Naomi, welcome to the Life You Deserve podcast. How the very devil are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. It's great to be here.
I'm so pleased because we've not actually, weirdly, met in person, although it always feels like we have, doesn't it?
No, I do feel like I know you, strangely, and this is the first time we've actually spoken, isn't it?
Yeah, other than through the medium of social media and...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So, I know that you've probably had a bit of a week last week because you had your little lad at home, and he loves being at home, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He is actually a little homeboy. Back to normal this week. Back to school this week. A few tears just yesterday morning, but everything's back to normal. So he's back to school. So we just had a nice week off together.
Nice, isn't it? And I think it's very common, isn't it? I remember those feelings, and not that my kids did it regularly. Is feeling so awful when you drop your kids at school and they're crying, and you think, and you worry about them all day, and they get home and they've had a brilliant day and they've forgotten all about you.
Yeah, well, I think it's usually worse on the parents, isn't it? Like I remember when he was at nursery, and he used to cry like more often at nursery, but apparently he was fine a few minutes later. But then you'd spend the whole day feeling bad about it, and they'd forgotten about you.
Yeah. So that's kind of something that when you talked about that, I read a post that you did the other day about it. And I thought, well, actually, I know you help a lot of women. Your speciality is with sort of anxiety and emotional health. But I know one of your specialities is actually social anxiety, and particularly for mums, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, I am an anxiety coach, but social anxiety is where my passion lies, because that's something that I lived with for a long time, and I just assumed it was part of my personality. I thought, I'm just shy. I've been labelled shy throughout my life, and there's no such thing as shyness, and it's a story we tell ourselves. And when I discovered how to move on from that and how much better I feel, I wanted everyone to feel like that struggles with social anxiety. So that's why I'm passionate about that.
So can you explain to me from your own personal perspective, but also from the women that you help and women that might be listening or watching here today, is how does that manifest itself? What are the feelings? What are the emotions that women will be experiencing
Mm.
with this, or mums will be experiencing with this kind of social anxiety type picture?
Yeah. It can manifest itself in lots of different ways, and what happens is a lot of people have high functioning anxiety. So you get on with your life, but there's always this sort of fear that holds you back. And social anxiety is this need for other people to like you. So it's a real strong need for people to like you, and you base a lot of your decisions around that. And
What are those decisions about the way that you look, the way that you behave, where you live, who you marry, or who your partner is? Everything is affected by that?
um yeah, it can do. It really can affect all sorts of areas of your life. I'll try and think of an example. Like people pleasing is a huge issue for people with social anxiety. That thing where you can't say no.
Uh-huh.
So I've got myself into all sorts of pickles, shall we put it, where I've said yes to stuff that I haven't really wanted to do, because if I didn't, because it actually, the thought of saying no to someone would fill me with massive fear. The thought of saying no to someone made me feel anxious, and it was because of this deep desire to have other people like me. I
Okay.
really, really needed other people to like me.
So
So I would, sorry,
no, if you said no, so if you said no to that person, that would mean for you that you would feel anxious, and that would
yeah,
really mean for you at the end of the day that you wouldn't be liked. Is that right?
yeah,
So,
it was
so if
really important.
how do we distinguish that though from anybody with who isn't necessarily a people pleaser, but they just have a kind of caring, more of a caring personality? Because you know, I find it difficult to say no. I don't suffer with social anxiety, but in the
Mm,
past I have found it difficult to say no,
mm,
because I just want to help the world. I want to save the world. I'm a bit of a rescuer, or have been in the past.
mm,
So how do we
yeah.
distinguish between the non-social anxiety person that is a people pleaser but not with that at its root, and the mum with the social anxiety that is so terrified that this will mean that somebody doesn't like her? How do we know the difference?
Well, there's a couple of things. If you're saying yes to stuff that goes against your values, that you do stuff that maybe, I don't know, that maybe it might be dangerous or something like that, and you don't have any boundaries,
Uh-huh.
that's where the issue is. When you don't have any boundaries, you basically allow people to walk all over you. Now I can totally understand what you're saying, because I'm empathetic, I'm a nurturer, I want to save people. That's in my makeup. I'm exactly the same as you in that respect. And but when you have that personality trait, and you don't have boundaries, and you don't have self-respect, or a sense of self-worth, it takes it to the extreme where you're doing stuff a lot that you don't want to do, or make you feel uncomfortable, or yeah, goes against your values, that sort of thing. That's what I'd say the difference is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. That's really well explained, actually, because
Mm.
although I am like you and you now, and me as I used to be, but one of the things I have done more of is being much more aware of my boundaries. But I've never put myself in those situations where things I've done have gone against my core values, not really. And I've never certainly put myself in a dangerous situation. So this is the concern, really, isn't it? Is to really help these women, that because I think, would you agree with me? I think women on the whole tend to be more caring anyway.
Yeah.
So it's natural for us to kind of want to help out and volunteer for stuff and, be the caring soul. But actually, what we're really talking about here is this almost paralyzing fear and paralyzing trait that you have learned, because as you said, you learn to be shy. You are not shy. Somebody's pigeonholed you. It's a bit like the I listen a lot to Joe Dispenza, who talks about something happening to you or somebody saying something to you that becomes a kind of mood, and then it becomes a kind of part of your makeup, and then all of a sudden it becomes part of your personality.
Yeah.
And then it's your personal reality. So, oh, isn't your daughter a shy little thing? Well, I'm shy, so well, I don't need to speak because I'm shy. And that becomes the temperament, and little girls always known as shy, and that becomes your personality.
Yeah.
And actually, as you say, in order to change that personality, you need to be able to understand that you can change the reality. And I believe that's what you do, and that's what you help people do. Is that correct?
Yeah. It's you hit the nail on the head there. It's what you were describing was how we develop beliefs about ourselves, and those beliefs are based on our experiences, and they do have a bit to do with our personality as well. So you just have to have been through you just have to experience something a couple of times to create a belief about yourself. So you're right. When I was younger, I was very much the good girl. And that's what I was labelled as in my family. Oh, you're the good one. My brother was a bit of a what's the word? What's the polite word? He was a bit of a tearaway. Let's put it that way. And so I was labelled the good girl, and that's the role that I fit into throughout life. And so that's what my belief was. And yeah, when I was labelled as shy and accommodating, and I did what I was told, and blah blah blah. And that's the belief that I had throughout my life. And it wasn't until I had coaching myself that I'd uncovered these beliefs about myself. And shyness, people talk about shyness all the time, like, oh, isn't he shy? And when they talk about little toddlers and things, I hate it when people call toddlers shy. Anyway, that's another story. It's not actually real. It's a story you tell yourself, and that's what I do when I work with the mums that I work with. We do that. We look at what beliefs you've got and how they're holding you back. And social anxiety is a set of beliefs. Basically, it's not actually reality. It's something you tell yourself. And through the coaching that I do, what we do is we try and get all of that stuff that's in your subconscious mind that you don't know about really. You just go through life accepting that about yourself. We get it out of your subconscious mind and into your conscious mind. And then when it's in your conscious mind, you can do something about it and you can make those changes. And that's basically what I did with myself.
Yeah. So can I ask you then, how through that process, because I know that if you go for any coaching or counselling and you've never done that before, and particularly if you're looking at there's a lot of regression therapy or those kind of scenarios that bring up things that are subconscious, as you say, in the technique that you use. For some people that can be quite a daunting process, can't it? Because it's easier, isn't it? The reason that we are in our personal reality and the personality that we have is because we've suppressed all the things that we don't want to face.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome mum's anxieties about actually really facing those things head on, knowing that sometimes some of those conversations and some of those feelings are potentially going to be very difficult and painful for them.
You can't do the coaching until, or this work on yourself, because it's deep work, that's what they call it, don't they? You can't do work on yourself until you're ready. And I think the best thing is education, and educating people to understand why they feel certain way, why they feel the way they do, why they behave the way they do, why they think the way they do. And with education, it's by educating them, they discover the stuff themselves. So it's a bit easier when they discover it for themselves rather than me psychoanalyzing them. Yeah. What else was I going to say?
So how explain how that works, because you have is it a 5-week program, an 8-week program?
Yeah, 8-week.
So part of the 8-week program is self-discovery, by you pointing them in the direction of, you know, perhaps you could have a look here, maybe you could look there. How does that work?
Well, the coaching program is broken down into 8 modules. What I teach, the teaching modules, and I basically teach them the steps. We call it the 7 pillars to self-empowerment, and it's each different module. It's like a training module, really. Gives them all the information they need to actually coach themselves and uncover this stuff themselves. So some of the stuff we go through would be, we look at beliefs, we look at what beliefs are. I mean, actually discovering that what you believe about the stuff you believe about yourself isn't necessarily true or based on fact is really eye-opening.
Yeah,
because people don't know that stuff. We believe it, we tell ourselves stuff so much we believe it's true. So explaining what beliefs are and all of that is really eye-opening. And we talk about thought processes and how different types of thinking styles can affect us as well, because we all fall into natural thinking styles as well, when some of them are quite unhelpful. What else do we talk about? We talk a lot about self-esteem, and we talk about trying to control stuff that's outside of your control, and what you can control and what you can't control, because that's a big issue for people with anxiety as well, trying to control stuff which is outside of your control, like the people pleasing. It's actually a form of manipulation, the people pleasing, because you're adapting your behavior to get somebody to like you. So that's trying to control other people. Sounds horrible when you put it like that. So that when you're trying to control stuff that's outside your control, I can't think of what else there is. So, but yeah, there's lots of different things like that to educate people so that they can discover the stuff themselves.
And how often is it that you meet women that are in very controlling relationships, whether it's coercive control or whether it's actually physical or sexual abuse? Is this common, this kind of social anxiety? Does that manifest in those women too?
I haven't actually met any women that are in those sort of relationships at the time, but they have been in those relationships. There was one mum that I worked with, and when she was in her 20s, and it's something she'd actually grown out of, but she had a lot of relationships like that were controlling and manipulative. I myself have been in those relationships. The reason
I'm asking is that I can imagine it's easy to fall into that trap and that relationship. And as we all know, it doesn't matter whether you're told you're shy or whether or not you are in an abusive relationship. That's still your personal reality, and therefore that's why women keep going back to what they know, is because it feels bizarrely safe to be the good girl or the shy girl or the girl that's doing wrong and therefore is being abused or whatever it is. So it just made me think, my goodness, how many women could be helped by what you do, empowering them to be educated as you describe, and to really do some self-examination, to raise their self-worth, to understand that the way that they are is as a result of experiences and can be changed, therefore, and that it's only part of their personality. It's a bit like the work that I do with women, for example, who are so scared of developing breast cancer. Whether or not they've got the gene in their family or not, there's this massive fear, because we live in a society that wants us to be fearful of things. Look at what's happening with the coronavirus at the moment. Let's just control everybody. We're making them really scared. And it's a bit like explaining to women that even if you have the genetic predisposition to breast cancer, does not mean that you are going to get it. That actually, genetics are only 10% of the way that your body responds to life. It's 90% of it are other things, and therefore you've got 90% opportunity to control that. To control the 10%, if you like. And it's a bit like this for you as well, is that when women realize that yes, a small part of their personality may be that they get a little bit anxious about being around new people or whatever it is, but actually that's only a feeling, and it's not. Would that be true?
It's one of the best. I remember when I went through the coaching program myself, because that's how I got into it. I did it myself first and thought this is amazing, and then trained in it myself. And it was the biggest revelation to me ever, to find out that social anxiety isn't real. It was something that the shyness was just something I told myself. And just having that piece of information actually was life-changing for me. Absolutely life-changing. Because and I had all these.
It gave you a choice, didn't it?
Yes. And I thought, I can believe something else about myself, and I do now. I believe something completely different now. I had a very strong belief that I was rubbish at talking, that I was boring, nobody wanted to hear what I had to say, so I just kept quiet. That was something that a really strong belief I had. And then I discovered that I don't have to believe that.
Thank goodness you don't, because you have so much to say and so much to give, and you say it in such an eloquent and fascinating and engaging way. So you are your best example, as we all are when we work in whatever job that we do. If we're passionate about something, we're always our best examples, aren't we? But I was wondering, is there, we know that you've worked with women who have come to you with this social anxiety. So can you just think of somebody perhaps that you've worked with who came to you suffering with this social anxiety, and explain first to us what that meant for her? How was that manifesting itself for her?
The first person that comes to mind is somebody that she was a teacher, and she had, and this is a symptom of social anxiety, she had what's the word? She felt really uncomfortable around authority figures, and this is a symptom of social anxiety as well. And she couldn't stand any criticism, and it was really affecting her job. and she really, really doubted her self-worth. And this was a lot to do with her social anxiety. But the thing about social anxiety is it's closely linked to self-esteem as well. So her self-esteem was really low as well. She doubted herself a lot. What she was doing was she wasn't able to take any sort of feedback because she was seeing it as a criticism, and she was taking it really, really badly. So,
and what did that actually mean for her in terms of her everyday life then? You know,
she was dreading.
At home.
Yeah, she dreaded going into work. She felt anxious all the time because she got herself into this state where she felt like she was going to be criticized all the time. She felt like people didn't take her seriously. She absolutely dreaded going into work. Her life was quite miserable, and she felt quite tired all the time because she was ruminating over it. And when you're overthinking, she overthought a lot of stuff. And
about giving up her job, even.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did think about giving up her job. This was when she came to me. That's when she came to me. She said, I don't know what to do. I seem to be jumping from job to job, and the same thing happens. She felt like she was jumping from relationship to relationship as well. And she'd met a really nice man that she bought the house with, and she didn't want that to happen again. She felt like she was sabotaging, and she didn't know how to stop.
That's interesting. Self-sabotage is part of, I can imagine self-sabotage being part of social anxiety. Not only of oneself, but also of what's going on around you as well.
She was basically, because of stuff that she was imagining, and that's what she was doing. A lot of this was in her imagination.
Yeah.
She was going to give up a perfectly good job, and in her head, the relationship wasn't going to last because she was going to do something to ruin it. And I don't know if you've heard of this.
A lot of what ifs. What if this?
Yes, that's it. Yes. Yeah, and that's where the problems lie, the what ifs, and that's your thoughts getting out of control. Because your thoughts are really powerful, aren't they? And they actually control your reality, whether they're based on fact or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was a real powerful lesson for her, just realizing that she was creating all of this herself.
So did this lady do your online program, or did you work on a one-to-one basis with her?
We did it over Skype calls. So yeah, one-to-one weekly Skype calls we did. Yeah.
And how quickly did you see a change in her?
There's a pattern with pretty much everyone you work with. They come in, they're really enthusiastic, they're ready to change, they're excited, and then you get to sort of week 3 or 4, and the changes aren't happening quick enough, and they feel really despondent, and they might cancel a session. They may be discovering stuff that they're not quite happy about, like we talked earlier. And so week 3 or 4 is like a real dodgy time, and then you almost sort of get over a hump. By about week 6, you start to see real changes, real significant changes, and then by the end of it, you can really notice the difference by the end of the 8 weeks. But it's not just a case of you've done it now, you've done your 8 weeks. It's tools that you've got to keep on applying forever, basically.
Yes, this is
you can fall back into old habits.
Yeah, a massive lifestyle change, and anything that you do in terms of personal or health development or whatever,
yeah,
fortunately it requires lifestyle changes that are permanent, and that you need to keep working at. So what happened for this lady? So what was the end result? And I don't mean after the 8 weeks, but kept in touch with her. How is her life now?
Well, I do keep in touch with her, actually. She did end up leaving her job, and what we uncovered was that she pursued a teaching career because that was what was expected of her. And actually, she was quite creative, and she was really artistic, and you can tell, can't you, by the way people dress, how creative they are. And she was very, very fashionable, and really took care in her appearance. And she started up her own nail business. So she started, but at the end of it, she started up her own business, and she's doing really well now. And she's got a little studio in her house, and she's got her own business for nail design. Yeah. So it worked out really well. But she did.
The guy.
Pardon?
Is she with the guy?
Yes, she is. Yeah. She's doing well. Yeah, she's doing well.
So that's interesting. So it's not only about social anxiety, but it's about being trapped in other people's views of you.
Yeah.
It's very common, isn't it? And I'm not sure that we still do it as parents. I hope we don't, but certainly in my generation, and obviously it sounds like hers, is that, and I know that in some cultures, you're not successful unless you're an engineer or a doctor or whatever, particularly, in the Asian culture. And this is what we have to be careful as parents not to do, is to lay those expectations on our children. Even though we have high hopes for them, that's a different thing to actually, this is expected of me. And I think each of us have our own personal expectations anyway. So to have somebody else's expectations laid on top of us is really very difficult, particularly if they're coming from that very early formative age, before 7 years old, because we know that's such a critical time.
Yeah.
So anything that is you're being exposed to, any words or views or, as you say, expectations at that time, can live with you for decades. And what you've done is uncovered that, and she probably wasn't even aware of that. Well, she knew it, but she didn't know the effect of that, I'm guessing. And that she had the opportunity suddenly to have choice. In fact, I'm in a group of people at the moment, and there's a lady there who, she talks a lot about her mum and dad expecting her to be a teacher, I think. And she went to, college because they expected it. She doesn't want to do that. And she's still, she's got her own children now. She's still finding it quite difficult to tell them that actually she wants to be an art teacher, or she wants to be an artist and create stuff, and have her own studio. And even though she's probably in her 40s, she's finding it really difficult to have that conversation with them. So it's really eye-opening for lots of people. The work that you're doing is not just about fixing, you're not just putting a plaster on here. You are actually, for a lot of people, uncovering the root cause, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I say in a lot of my a lot of my messages, actually. If this isn't a plaster, so if you're feeling anxious, and it's having an effect on your life, you go to the doctors, and the doctor will prescribe you some medication. That you feel better within a couple of weeks. That is putting a plaster on it, because you're just dulling the symptoms rather than actually finding out where they come from and doing something about it. It's definitely, and that's what I say quite often to people, is that if you want quick fixes, don't work. Quick fixes, you're not going to get the results unless you put the effort in. And I think that's the same. I think that's pretty much the same with anything, not just your emotional health. Absolutely anything.
Yeah. And so in terms of, so you've obviously given us an example of that lady, and particularly in the workplace. How finally, before we go, what's the effect of social anxiety on mums? How does that kind of affect their lives and the way that they operate within their families and how they bring up their children? How does that look?
I think there's this. I think there's a real issue with women that doubt themselves, not just mums, women in general doubting themselves. And before we have kids, we doubt ourselves in our work, we doubt ourselves in our relationships, whatever. And then we have kids and we doubt our parenting skills. And it's because we're not very good at giving ourselves a pat on the back. We're really good at picking out our things that we perceived to have done wrong. We're really good at telling ourselves off. We're not very good at saying, you know what, you've done a really good thing there, or you've tried really hard. So there's this epidemic, I don't know whether that's a bit dramatic, of women that doubt themselves. And so when you carry that into parenting, it can affect all sorts of areas. So you feel judged often, and you compare yourself to other parents, and it makes you feel bad. You compare yourself to other people on social media, and that makes you feel bad. You're second guessing yourself all the time. This was definitely true for me. And also it has an effect on it can have an effect on your birthing experience as well. This is another thing that I talk about. If you take your social anxiety into the labour ward with you, you're not going to stick up for yourself, and it's almost like being passed along a conveyor belt if you don't, and just saying yes to everything. And it can traumatize you if you feel that really out of control during labour. So it can affect you. Having social anxiety can affect all sorts of areas of your life. And if you feel traumatized during birth, you're starting off on the back foot with parenting as well.
That's really interesting, Naomi. And I spend my life with menopausal women, it seems.
Yeah, the other end.
The other extreme. And of course, anxiety is a big part. Anxiety, depression, low self-worth is a big part of perimenopausal and postmenopausal symptoms. And actually, I can see what you're saying is, I was with a group of women the other day, and probably a good third of them had gone to their doctors with what clearly were menopausal symptoms. And the first line of defense was to put them on antidepressants.
Yeah.
Or medication. And I don't mean hormone replacement therapy, which is kind of replacing something that's not there. But they were put on medications, which is the plaster over the top. They weren't actually looking underneath. And, one of the things that I'm really keen to do, like you're doing, is to empower these women to stick up for themselves. So as they stick up for themselves in the labour ward, so they need to stick up for themselves and be very clear about what they want in terms of, their midlife years and how they need support through there as well. I think we probably need to do another podcast on these subjects. Actually, I think that would be a really good thing to talk about, is to revisit that between us, and because I think there's a lot of commonality in there. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so how can people find you, Naomi?
You can find me on LinkedIn, search for Naomi Buffrey. Facebook, again, search for Naomi Buffrey, and Instagram, and my website as well is naomibuffrey.com. So I'm really easy to find. Just search for Naomi Buffrey.
Okay.
I think I'm the only one, or there might be one more Naomi Buffrey.
It is quite an unusual name, isn't it? So and I'll put some links up. I'll put some links up on here. So thank you very much for sharing your time with us today and your expertise with us today. It's very nice.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll have another conversation on another episode of The Life You Deserve. Thanks for listening, everybody. you.